Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for pierrefonds-dollard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to be able to speak to BC25 as the critic for seniors from the official opposition. I'll begin my speech by mentioning something that our dear Prime Minister said. A few months ago, he was in Switzerland, and he said in an address that the aging population in Canada was a problem and that we had to deal with this problem. Otherwise, that may have more serious consequences than the economic crisis that we recently went through. First of all, I would like to say officially that for the NDP, an aging population is not a problem. It's a situation. It's not a surprise. We've known this for a long time. People who have 60, 70 years old now, well, they just weren't born yesterday. Not only is this not a problem, but this is a source of wealth. Canada is wealthy with these seniors who have experience, who continue to share their knowledge and their experience with us. These are people who volunteer in their communities, in politics. These are people who spend precious time with their families. These people are not a problem for our country, regardless of how many they are. Now we have to deal with the situation of aging. We have to learn to adapt. And as far as this is concerned, yes, there are things to be done. As a country, we have to adapt to ensure that everyone will be able to continue living in dignity. The demographic curve is something that we're aware of. We've known about it for a long time. And one of the ways to adapt is to ensure that seniors have a reliable pension plan that will enable them to live for many years after the retirement in dignity and to live happily, we hope. Today, we're talking about a bill on the pooled registered pension plan. This is a good news if we look at it in general terms, because we see that Parliament is studying this issue and is wondering how we can help people to have a healthy retirement. But what we don't agree with is how we need to adapt. The tools that we need to give to people to ensure that they will have a good retirement. What do people want exactly? That's the first question that we have to ask. That's the real problem. What do people expect us to do to help them, Mr. Speaker? I have gone throughout Quebec. I visited more than 30 towns, and people have said that when we talk about the secure financing of pension plans, that this is something that is very important. They express some fears and concerns, and I'd like to talk about a few of them today. First of all, old age security. This is an important component of our overall pension plan. Old age security is something that is universal. Everyone is entitled to it as soon as they hit age 65. So everybody is counting on it, particularly those families that have a modest income and people who live below the poverty line. These are people who don't have an income that enables them to set money aside. These are people who may have had an accident, who may have had to stop work for a long period of time, or perhaps they weren't able to get back into the labor market. These were people that were retired or laid off at age 55, 60. So the old age security is an essential component. It enables Canada to rank amongst those countries with the lowest number of poor people. And despite this, we hear talk about amending the OAS to raise the age of eligibility. I've discussed this matter to great length with other towns, along with other issues. The Canadian pension plan and the Quebec pension plan, it's equivalent. This is a pension plan that is for all workers. All workers, regardless of the number of hours that they work, regardless of the type of employer they work for. Anyone who works contributes to the Canada pension plan or the Quebec pension plan, and depending on the number of hours that the employer has employee has worked enables a number of years worked enables them to get a certain amount of money. But this pension plan is not adequate on its own to replace the salary. So you have to compensate with other things. We have the old age security and the CPP. These alone don't enable Canadians to have a comfortable financial security once retired. So there is another component, another benefit that people who are retired receive. That is the employer retirement pension. Unfortunately, 12 million Canadians don't have this type of pension, and more companies are becoming bankrupt and have not funded their pension plans properly. So there are a lot of court challenges as a result of this. Unfortunately, in many cases, the pension plan was poorly managed by the employer, the result being that the pension benefits are lower. There's something that we could do to help Canadians here who have employer pension plans. But once again, there are some people who have no type of pension plan provided by their employer. Another type of savings includes the RSPs, the TFSAs. Once again, Mr. Speaker, many Canadians can't set aside money in these types of plans. Somebody who works on a full-time basis at minimum salary is living under the poverty line. These people find it very difficult to set money aside in RSPs or in TFSAs. I'll get back to this issue later, but once again, there is something we can do to help Canadians to be able to save more for their retirement. So people do have expectations of the government, and I heard a very interesting suggestion along that line. I'd like to remind you that people want a pension plan that is reliable, that will provide them with retirement financing. I have great news. We have the tools to do this. We do have the resources to enable better financial security. All we need to do is to take the issue seriously and to have the political courage to do something. Unfortunately, we don't see this political courage in C25. We don't see any strong, solid intervention to help Canadians save for their retirement days, and that is most unfortunate. What does Bill C25 give to Canadians? We have to ask ourselves these questions, because there's not a big deal of difference between these pooled registered pension plans and an RSPs, or between a TFSA. What is the difference? Well, there are some insignificant differences, but not really adequate in themselves to really make a huge difference for people saving for their retirement. These measures are not really going to resolve the problem that I explained earlier. I'd like to remind you that yes, 12 million Canadians do not have an employer pension plan. 31% of Canadians who are eligible to RSPs have contributed. Only 31%, Mr. Speaker. Why? Why? Because 60%, why do 60% of all Canadians not contribute to RSPs? Did the Conservatives ask themselves this question? Because it's important to understand why. Why? Why is this happening? Why are Canadians who are eligible, why are they not contributing to an RSP? There may be some reasons that would also apply to the PRPP. 44% of all Canadians have a TFSA. So why is it that 60% of all Canadians don't have a TFSA? We have to ask that question as well. It's very relevant. Once again, is it because the person doesn't have enough income to do this? If the person can't put money in an RSP, or and a TFSA, maybe the person won't be able to do so in a PRPP either. Half the people who have a TFSA in Canada earn over $100,000 per year. So once again, Canadians with an average income or a lower income don't have money to put any into these types of plans. In some countries, they have had a PRPP, and there have been some failures. There have been some countries that have been successful. New Zealand, for instance, and the United Kingdom implemented a pooled registered pension plan, and they did have some success. That makes us think. But what is the difference between the programs that these countries implemented and the one that this government wants to go ahead with? The biggest difference is that in New Zealand and in the United Kingdom, the employers are compelled to contribute if the employee does. So it's an incentive that's very attractive for employees to contribute, and that increases the amounts of money that people are going to be able to withdraw once retired. So this is an incentive that is attractive to people. This type of incentive does not exist in the TFSA or in the PRPP proposed in C25. So we need an incentive to encourage people to contribute. In New Zealand and the United Kingdom, the state provides tax support or pays a bonus to employees who contribute to their PRPP. Once again, the countries that have been successful with these PRPPs have provided incentives that are much more solid than those put forward in C25. I'm not just saying that this is the one and only solution. I'm just saying there are other ways that could make this tool much more attractive and more effective. Now, in some cases, we've wondered why the government has put forward such a solution. I'd like to draw a parallel with another situation that we're talking about to great length these days. And of course, I'm talking about the increase to the eligibility to OAS. Why increase the eligibility age by 2 years? There are a lot of people who have asked the questions but don't get a good answer. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about experts who have been asking these questions. They're unable to justify the reason for doing this. First of all, what were the objectives of the government when they decided to change OASS? We were told that it wasn't viable, but several experts have said that, yes, it is viable. Are there any figures to back this up? What objective did the Conservatives have in mind when they wanted to change the eligibility age? What amount of money is needed to make this program viable? Another day, a colleague opposite said that this was a common sense question, a question of simple mathematics, but that's not a very convincing argument. So could the government please identify a clear project with clear objectives that will enable us to really look at the various options properly? And what other options have been studied? Because there are others. We are given one option in this bill, but what are the other options that were considered? In the case of the PRPP, why did the government opt for this option and not another? We have to ask ourselves these questions. We're not getting any answers. It's difficult to work in cooperation and come up with some concrete proposals when we're not even informed about the real objectives. So why was the PRPP retained over and above others? And what impact will this have in the short, medium, and long term? In other countries, an option like this one was studied, implemented, and didn't work. Why in Canada, with this bill, C25, would it be any different? I'd like to hear some answers to this question. What will happen? Why will it work in our country whereas it didn't work in other countries? It's well known that the NDP is proposing another option other than that set out in C25. We're suggesting that we double the benefits for the CPP and QPP rather than creating a PRPP. Why? Well, management costs or administration costs. What will the management costs be for a PRPP? Once again, we've not had any answers. We've just heard approximate answers, but the administrative costs would be much higher. That's clear. Secondly, it's much more fair for certain sections of the population. I would focus on women as an example. The CPP takes into account the obligation of women to leave the labor force if they've had children. The obligation of people to leave the labor force if they have to take care of a sick relative. Often the women are the ones who are doing this. But a PRPP doesn't take those considerations into account. The person has to stop contributing for a certain length of time and will be penalized once retired. The CPP is a plan where the risk is borne by everyone, and since everyone pools their contributions, it enables us to help those people who have had to take leave for disability reasons, for taking care of family members, etc. So if we turn to a BRPP plan rather than an improved CPP, we will increase poverty amongst women. Poverty amongst senior women is much more significant than when compared to men. We cannot remain silent about this. This is a real problem and you have to be sensitive to it. Furthermore, risk, shared risk. In the PRPP, there is a shared risk by everyone. However, in a CPP is shared, the risk is shared by everyone, but not in the case of the PRPP. What happens for someone who lives longer than average? The person doesn't know how much money he or she's going to get once retired. So if this person lives for a long time, it'll be very difficult to arrange the financing to ensure that the person has enough money until he or she dies. It doesn't make sense. We can avoid these situations by improving the CPP. Same thing for someone who becomes disabled. Let's say the person's 58, is disabled, stops contributing. Once again, all the risk is being put on the shoulders of one person, whereas in fact we could share the risk amongst the general public. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, I don't have much time remaining. I still have a lot I'd like to say, but I would like to end on a positive note. Canadians want to know that this is not the only way to proceed. The Conservatives are tending to say if we don't pass this, that will be the end of the economy. We'll be like this country or that country and we'll be in a lot of trouble. But that's not true. There are several ways that you can manage this issue, and there are options. There are alternatives to Bill C-25. As I mentioned earlier, we could double the CPP benefits. That's something that can be done and should be done to ensure the financial security of more people. Secondly, increase the GIS. I talked about poverty among seniors. The amounts given by the government are not adequate to allow people to get out of poverty. Sometimes people have to choose between paying for medication or food. That's not acceptable. We need to improve the GIS to ensure that our seniors live in dignity, maintaining the access to OAS at 65. That's clear for the NDP. Protect pensions with employers. in a nutshell, there are all kinds of positive things that can be done to help Canadians in concrete terms so that they'll have secure finances once retired. Thank you.
Questions and comments?
For Kitchener, Conestoga.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened with interest to my colleague's remarks, but there was one comment right near the end that I really take exception to. She was commenting about the amounts given by government aren't adequate. Well, Mr. Speaker, the amounts that are given by government are actually the money that is earned by Canadians. And so we simply can't continue to spend and spend and spend other people's money. That's the NDP proposal. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask my colleague why she would be opposed to extending the right to a workplace pension to Canadians who don't have that option now. Over 60% of Canadians currently do not have access to a workplace pension. Mr. Speaker, there's all kinds of small and medium-sized enterprises, and we know that the small and medium businesses of this country are the economic engine that keeps our country going. So why would she deny the possibility, for example, for a small engine repair shop or a dental office or a hairdresser, you name it, there's all kinds of examples of these kinds of businesses that up until now, they can't afford to go and buy a pension plan, but if they pool their resources with others in similar professions, they can actually get a low-cost, effective pension plan. Why would she deny that to the 60% of Canadians that don't have access to that? Thank you.
The honourable member for pierrefonds-dollard. I want to thank my colleague for that question. It's a very relevant and intelligent question. It's true. I would be prepared to say that the idea in itself is not a negative one. But what I'm saying is that it is not the best solution. A number of Canadians do not have the ability to put money into RRSPs. Is the pooled registered pension plan going to help these Canadians? Perhaps, but not all. We can do better, Mr. Speaker, and that is what I've been saying since the beginning. Why not improve benefits under the Canada Pension Plan? This is a system that works well, management fees are low, and this can allow us to ensure that the risks are managed collectively.
That's the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, we've had Prime Ministers like Mackenzie King, Lester Pearson, Prime Ministers that have seen the value of retirement and the importance in providing pensionable incomes for our seniors. And today we look at the foundation programs that were put into place by Liberal administrations in the past, such as the CPP and OAS, the GIS, programs that have provided for seniors over generations now, and we believe in those programs. Having said that, in regards to this specific bill, there is provincial jurisdictions, we're told from the federal government, where they are supporting the need to have this particular bill pass, so that this new pension option is there for those few Canadians. Ultimately, it could be quite a few, in particular provinces of Quebec and Manitoba, where there's an NDP administration, which seem to be supportive of having this pooled pension plan. We in the Liberal Party see it as a small tool. It needs to be changed. It could be far more effective, but there does seem to be a desire to have this. I'm wondering why the NDP would oppose this as at least a pension option. And that seems to be all it really is. It's a very small one. We too want to see the increases to programs like CPP, but this does seem to be a consumer-friendly option for individuals that might be able to have additional pension money going forward. And I don't quite understand why the NDP would oppose it as an option.
The honourable member for pierrefonds-dollard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that we also have to stress the fact that there are a lot of people who are not in favor of the creation of this kind of a pension plan, but who are in favor of improving the Canada Pension Plan, or in Quebec the equivalent, which is the Quebec Pension Plan. I would like to quote a recent study by the Quebec pension system that says this brief analysis shows there can be a significant gap between the retirement level of living of individuals who have access to a determined or fixed benefit pension plan and those who have to rely solely on RRSPs. and other types of vehicles like this. And we can include in this the pooled registered pension plan, or RPPs. There is a better way to ensure the financial security and the quality of life of individuals than by creating a program like this one. We need to take strong action, take political courage, and concrete measures.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Scarborough Rouge River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for her excellent intervention on this topic. And we know that recently at the World Economic Forum, our Prime Minister announced that there will be major transformations coming to Canada's retirement pension systems, and the only transformative change that Canada really needs for retirement security is investment in our Canada pension plan and the Quebec pension plan. Yet this government once again is proposing another privately administered savings plan, privately administered voluntary savings plan that we know statistics have shown, even members across the aisle have said that people are not participating in it. It makes it difficult. I know that my colleague here has many suggestions. I wonder if she could just elaborate very quickly, briefly, I guess, on some suggestions that would be equitable to lift every senior in Canada out of poverty rather than just the wealthy ones.
The Honourable Member for Pierrefonds-Dollard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my colleague for the question. Yes, first of all, I have talked a lot about old age security program. This program is something that is essential when we talk about the social safety net, and increasing the age of access would be really hurting people who are living close to the poverty level and the middle class. There are other things that Canadians want to see to ensure their retirement security. They're investing in RSPs, and they see their RSP amounts dropping because they're on the stock markets. They're invested in the stock markets. This is not retirement security. Canadians want a pension plan that is with a defined benefit. This means that they can get a fixed amount, no matter what that amount is. They can count on this kind of determined or fixed benefit. Questions and comments.
Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Building on the previous several questions, Mr. Speaker, I think it's clear to everybody on this side of the House, I think we all agree that what we need is a real CPP, expanded, enhanced, made functional. But having said that, I'm getting a lot of correspondence from small business people in my riding saying this isn't great, but at least it would be something for small businesses and people who currently don't have another vehicle. So my question is simple to the honourable member, and that is, despite all the things that we'd like to see, which would be much better, does she think there is some potential for this to meet the needs of some people, and would there be any real harm in it if we were to go with the flow here?
The Honourable Member for Pierrefonds-Dollard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to respond by talking about another very similar tactic that we've seen in other cases. Recently, there was an announcement that the Conservative government was strongly advocating against senior abuse or elder abuse because they amended a small element in the legislation that allowed the clearer identification, if you will, of assault against seniors, and there would be stronger, stiffer sentences. This is the kind of smokescreen that the Conservatives put forward. They boast about taking action for a certain cause, and yet they only amend a small section, and they could do much more. Why not attack the real causes of abuse among seniors? Why not fight against poverty among seniors? Why not ensure that seniors have access to affordable housing that is adapted to their needs? Why not take stronger, stiffer measures to ensure that we really address the problems rather than making big promises with little change?